Happy Tuesday. Here we go. Yesterday you got exposed to dot plots. And what's kind of nice about those is it gives you a way to organize data pretty simply. So as we look here, just kind of recap what you did yesterday in the Desmos activity, which some of you still need to finish. Yeah. Take a look at this screen when we got to, I think, screen number 5. It says here, well, how many students are in Miss Carter's class? So as you're looking at this, you had to count all the dots, and I think you should have gotten 18 there. Okay, and then it says how many letters are in the shortest name. Okay, now it doesn't mean 2, it means how many letters. 2 students had 4-letter names, and so you would want to put 4 here because we're talking about the number of letters. How many letters are in the longest name? Somebody had a 10-letter name. Oofda, that's a lot. Okay, what name length occurs most often? That's really easy to see when you look for the peak, all right, which was 5. Okay, and then as you work through this, you kind of started getting the hang of answering it. As I looked, I noticed some of you may have missed on that very last one where you were creating the dot plot. You ended up having to make sure that you had your high and low in place. 3 occurred the most often. And then it kind of didn't matter where the rest of them went, as long as you kept that 3 as the most often, but you had to have a total of 10. So if you got it marked wrong with an X, as I was looking through, some of you maybe only had 9 dots and didn't have 10. There you go. So just be careful as you're looking at it. Well, today, here's the game plan. All right, we're diving into the textbook today. So I need you to have 3 things ready for me. Textbook, calculator, something to write with. And as you do that, if you need to pause the video right now to get on board, do that. Okie dokie, artichoke, here we go. So I'm going to amp this up a little bit so we have a little more room to write. Comparing data. So it's not just about creating, then it's taking a look at it and analyzing it. Let's take a peek. People once used body parts for measurements. They didn't have tape measures and rulers, okay? So for example, an inch typically was the width of what they said a man's thumb. So way back in jolly old England, they say that King Henry I also stated that a yard is measured from your nose, or I always use the center of my chin, out to the end of your thumb. Okay. In fact, my mom taught me that eons ago when trying to measure fabric really quickly. So for facts, you just kind of would measure your fabric that way. All right, so this dot plot actually shows the different lengths in inches of the measurement from your nose out to the end of your thumb to see where they're really close to 36 inches, which is what we call a yard today. So here's the data. Okay, we got dots all over the place. All right, and as we look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So there must be 21 students in this class, okay? All right, let's take a look. Describe the shape. Well, I don't know. It seems pretty evenly spread out. Usually we're asking for observations like this. Most of the data, because you notice they'll say, are they evenly distributed or kind of lumped or clumped all in one area or one side? And we'll say it's pretty evenly distributed. So maybe I could say that. It's pretty evenly distributed. And you could say most of the data kind of is between like 30 to 34. We've got a few breaks there. So I would say something more like this. Most between 30 to 34. Maybe some books might even go down to say 29. I mean, really, these are only an inch apart, but the majority of it kind of occurs in that part. Then it says, describe the center of the dot plot. What single dot would best represent your data? Well, sometimes the way we measure the data is to look for the peak. Is there a very pronounced high point? On this one, well, maybe 31. Sometimes we say, what's the median? Well, if I started doing that, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1. Well, then about 31 and a half is the median. The peak is kind of at 31. So when we describe the center, we would say, well, I suppose a single dot might be 31. Okay. It is close to 31. Some might say 31 and a half. There's a little bit of wiggle room because we're interpreting, okay? And there might not be one very clear exact answer. You might describe it a little different than your neighbor. Okay. Let's take a look. The spread. Okay. Now this is pretty straightforward, okay? The spread ends up being what was the smallest number to the largest number. This is how we calculated the range before. All right. And then have you heard this word? Are there outliers? So when we look at this data here, and I've got a quick switch back to get my select because things are making me a little crazy that this got all wonky. So an outlier is a data point that seems to be way out of whack with the rest of the data. It doesn't match. It's like either way too low or way too high. Okay, I'm going to erase all my goobs on here just so we can take a look again more carefully. Is there anything that appears to be way out of whack? Not really. You know, this isn't that far away. If I had something way down here at like 20, that might be considered an outlier. So here we're going to say no outliers. How about mean, median, mode? Sometimes that's fairly easy to recognize from a data set. Okay, now the mean, we've got to do some adding, so hang on there. Median was kind of simple. We already found that one. Okay, so I'm going to write up here because it's a little easier for me to see without losing my data. Okay, so the mean we'll calculate in a second. The median, we found that already. That was 31 and a half or 31.5, if you like decimals better. And the range went from a high of 35 down to 28. And so the range is when I subtract those two and I get 7. So our last task is the challenge of working to find what the mean is from all of this data. So here we go. We have to start adding 28. We've got a couple of 29s. There's a 30. Ooh, there's a 30.5 and another 30.5. I've got 3 31s, 2 31 and a halves, 31.5, 31.5. Okay, we've got 2 32s. We've got, looks like 2 32 and a halves. Okay, 2 33s. Gross, this is a lot. A 33 and a half. 2 34s. Oh my goodness, when will this end? And a 35. This might have been a good example of trying to get this thing in a list, huh? I get a total, and you'll have to check me here, of 664.5. There were 21 students. So we're going to divide that by 21. And I get about 31.6 when I round that to the tens place. Okay, that's a pretty concise and good data set because the mean and the median are really close to each other. And if we looked at the mode, that also is 31. So, all right, pretty good. Turn the page. The The next thing you'll do is kind of compare some data sets. So take a look at these two. This shows 15 high school players. Here's basketball, here's softball, and they've got them on the chart by their height. 5'0". They've got two people. This would be 4'11". This would be 5'1", 5'2", 5'3". Ooh, a lot of them at 5'4". Look at that. And so on. Basketball. Notice I don't have anybody at 5'0" or 5'2". Got a few people here. Lots of them here. Okay. And so on. Interesting. Now, when they say visually compare, you're trying to look at it and just tell me something about it. What does it look like? So they say for softball, looks like the players definitely are 5'6" and less. Okay. Nobody's taller than that. Take a look at basketball. Now, there are some shorter players, but a lot of them kind of are from 5'8" and taller. That makes sense if you play basketball. Visually compare the centers. Now, here you're kind of looking for the peak and or the median to describe what does it look like, because most of them kind of typically will be shaped like a bell, kind of like this. All right. So for softball, kind of looks like 5'4". If you went and then calculated the median and started working your way in, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The median actually is 5'4". So both of them kind of work that way. Basketball, definitely the peak point is 5'8". 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh yeah, and definitely the median is right there at 5'8". Okay. Compare the spreads. Well, from 4'11" to 5'6". Okay, which gives you about a 7-inch spread there. Here, the spread is much wider. You've got a few shorter people. They probably have got good hustle. Maybe they're a good point guard or they're a good shooting guard. 5'2" to 6'0". That's about a 10-inch spread. There's a bigger spread in the basketball players than for softball, to be sure. All right. This is the kind of work you're doing today. All right. And you will turn to page 339. So go here. Oops, right there. This is your assignment. Okay. Go ahead, work on it. After the video, take attendance, but then work on these questions before you dive into Schoology to try to answer them. Okay. Do that first and then go to town. All right. Good luck today. And as always, may the force be with you.